LandryFootball.com. And Chris, how are you, sir? I hope you're having a fantastic morning.
So far, so good. How are you guys doing?
Or well, go to LandryFootball.com if you want to know more about football than you ever dreamed you could. So I want some message board posters to give me some X's and O's questions for Chris. That's what I want to do here in the next couple of minutes. We do want to look back at the Georgia game, but before we do that, Chris, if we can, if I'm Tennessee, and I know this kind of gets a little bit out of the arena that we usually discuss things in, but if I'm Tennessee with Clemson losing, with Alabama losing, I'm feeling pretty good that if I take care of business, I'm going to be right there at that 4 spot for the college football playoff. What do you think?
Well, here's the thing. A couple of things to keep in mind. The way the committee operates, and I know we can question whether it's good or not or how they do it, but in their mandate is if you don't win your conference championship, you have to be, get the exact word, you have to be significantly better than a conference champion. That's in their bylaws. So in other words, so Tennessee, unless Georgia does something that I don't foresee them doing, Tennessee's not going to play in their conference championship game. So when people are comparing against, again, so Clemson wins the conference championship. TCU wins their conference championship. What you have to say in that committee room is Tennessee is not better than Clemson. They're significantly better. That's how they have to answer that. They just value conference championships more. Now, you can criticize that because not every conference is equally as strong. And so I think that's a more than a fair debate, but that's kind of the reality. So Tennessee's, regardless of where they are now, and even if they're 4, remember this, and I think this is important for fans to understand, Dave. I'm not trying to, be down, but if they rank like, I don't know where they're going to be ranked, but I'm telling you, even if they're ranked like 4th, that doesn't mean they're going to stay there because nobody's won their conference championship yet. So TCU, Clemson will likely jump them as conference champions. Now, again, you have to use that, are they significantly better? So, look, Tennessee's, the other thing I would say is, let's say it comes down to Oregon. Well, Tennessee got beat just as bad as Oregon got beat. Don't tell me that, the score is different. Anybody that watched the game, it was a beatdown and probably worse because it's later in the year as opposed to early in the year, and it's clear Oregon's gotten better. So I'm not making a case. I'm just saying it's a tougher path than maybe Vols fans might hope. But there's still a possibility. I do think definitely Clemson losing, to your point. Yeah, if it's an unbeaten Clemson winning the conference title, forget it. But a one loss Clemson, a one loss Oregon, a one loss TCU makes it more likely that it could happen. And that's, again, just to explain the criteria. The other thing is, what is the Michigan-Ohio State game going to look like? How close is it? Is it going to be close? Is it going to be one-sided? Because that's going to be pivotal too. The other thing that Tennessee's got to hope for, and I think this is probably going to happen, Georgia has to win the conference championship game.
Yes.
Because if LSU wins it, even though LSU lost to Tennessee, what are they going to do? They value the conference championship. LSU's got 2 losses. Tennessee's got 1. Tennessee lost one head-to-head. Tennessee should absolutely be ahead of LSU, right? Well, maybe they should. I don't know that the committee, at least on their path, may not do that. Now, we've seen precedent for it happening. Ohio State jumped Penn State when Penn State won the Big Ten one year. So it can happen. But all of those things are suppositions that, to me, it's not just what happens, but how it looks and how a team looks. And it's everybody. Fans tend to look at their team in a bubble, and my team, you have to look at everybody the same way objectively because that's what they're going to do. Now, whether they're going to get the right for, I don't know. It usually works itself out. But I still think that they're in the mix. But I think the performance, the dominating way in which they were completely controlled, hurts them a great deal. because I don't think you look at that and say, yeah, that you lose to the number one team, which is a positive. Not many teams may be able to do that to them, but you have to look at that. And again, how does that compare? Oregon may lose a second game. They may not win the conference. There are a lot of things that could take place that right now we can go through, 99 scenarios and only 2 or 3 of them are going to be real relevant in a couple of weeks.
Yep. I got 99 scenarios, but relevance ain't one. I think it was a Jay-Z song. Was that it, Amanda? Kinda? No, not quite.
I
All right.
can't hear you.
All right, sorry. So you've got, geez, totally dismissing my Jay-Z reference. All right, so now let's look at Oregon for 1 second. I want to get to the Tennessee-Georgia game. Don't get me wrong, but let's look at Oregon. What do you think of them as a football team? Because it's not as if they get to just kind of finish off the schedule with an easy run. I mean, they got number 24 Washington at home this week. They've got Utah at home. Then they finish off at Oregon State.
Yes.
Do you see this Oregon team
and the conference championship, right, if they get that far, and they don't play divisions, it's the top 2. So who's that going to be? UCLA, USC, whatever. How it may. So the chances of Oregon going through that unscathed is unlikely. So that's a good thing if you're a Tennessee fan. But if they do go through it, that resume is going to look awfully good. And I would say, as a conference champion with 1 loss, they probably won't be ranked ahead. But again, that depends. How does it look? How dominant? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. So yes, it's a good thing. It's a bad thing. TCU, same way. I mean, I felt like it's going to be tough for them to run the table. They're getting close. This week's going to be big, but so yeah, I think it's fair to look at it, question it. Here's the thing I will say, and I know this may be a little bit off the topic, but the important thing is to really focus on where Tennessee is.
Sure.
And you want to get there, but the flaws and the narrow path to victory that I talked about on Thursday and all, this team doesn't match up with certain teams. And I don't think Tennessee, to me, as good as they looked all year, I don't know that they're like national playoff caliber. I think there's a path for them to get in. They could play Georgia 10 times and Georgia beat them 9, 8, whatever. Now, how many teams can do that? Maybe only Georgia can, so it's, I'm not saying that they don't belong in there. I'm just saying that I think Tennessee's far from a well-rounded team. I think there are more teams that are well-rounded that I think the real issue is how they're going to finish the season, I think, unbeaten. I don't think there's a team on their schedule that can challenge them. They're just going to have to live off what they've done this year and get a lot of credit. And, the good thing is they beat LSU and Alabama. So the LSU beating Alabama is, well, Alabama is not as good. Maybe it's not as good as a win, but the LSU win looks a little bit better. Where the reality is, it is what it is. They beat both of them. And so they're 11-1. They've, to me, had a better season than I thought they would. Better season than probably most Tennessee fans, other than the ones that just, hey, my team's going to win. I think we've talked about it, had some real benefits on their schedule, and they took advantage of it. They're really, really good at what they do. But when you have an elite team that can take away and limit what they do, they don't have another path to victory. And that's what I meant to the narrow path that they had. If they can get what they do well going, they can play with anybody. But, it's like the toolbox theory. I use these goofy scenarios, not to be goofy, but to give a better, it's like they're going in and they got only 1 or 2 tools. And, Georgia, for example, can throw it, they can run it, they can defend the run, they can cover, they can play great on special. They do all the things well. And the difficulty for a team like Tennessee and others is that, and I used this example in the past, haven't I? Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, They really were very good. But when they get to the national playoffs, they didn't have success because they weren't well-rounded. To me, the best teams are the teams that can win in multiple ways, because somewhere, somehow, you may be a little off with your strength. Can you win another way? And that's the real test of, to me, a great team. That's difference between being good and exciting and fun versus being championship level. And I don't think Tennessee is that type of team, although it's been a phenomenal year. And I don't think the loss to Georgia should diminish the success that they've had this year. But the way in which they were dominated kind of proves a little bit of what I'm saying. I don't know that many teams can do that like to them, though, this year.